Welcome, thanks for coming. My name is Corey Waters, and this is Vegan Series. Vegan Series is a speaker series that seeks to stimulate interactions about veganism and conscious harmlessness, and also social justice, interspecies social justice, as well as interhuman social justice. I conduct Vegan Series through Temple Vegan Action Network, or TVAN. The next series event is on November 3rd, and that event will not feature any special guest speakers. Instead, it will be an open forum on the vegan experience. What is the vegan experience like? How have we come to practice veganism? Why are we vegan? How do we do it? What challenges do we encounter? And how do we negotiate those challenges? How much do we love Blackbird pizza? Seriously, how much do we love Blackbird pizza?
A lot.
So these are just some of the questions that we will seek to answer on that occasion. And the event is for both vegans and non-vegans. So please come with your questions. Please come with your personal experiences. Or just come and quietly observe. Should be a good time. The cake that you are enjoying tonight comes from A Better Cake. These are free samples, which I appreciate. So check out A Better Cake if you can online. Tonight is the 10th series event in 2 years. And for this very special occasion, we have two spectacular guests. This is Jasmin singer and Mariann Sullivan. They are vegan advocates and animal rights activists based in Brooklyn, New York. They are the lead hens for a brood of hens, known as our hen house. Although a brood, you'd have to be born at the same time, right?
Oh, I have no idea. No,
Right.
I actually don't know anything about animals.
There you go. So for a brood of hens, and thanks for turning the light, Jasmine.
Oh, did I do that? Really?
Our hen house, what is it? It is a 501c3 nonprofit founded in 2010. It's a multimedia hive that seeks to mainstream the movement to end the exploitation of other animals. This multimedia hive consists of a website updated daily with original content. This is the website that you're looking at. It consists of a podcast, the Our Hen House podcast, which has run for 246 episodes. And by the way, these are your co-hosts of that podcast. It also consists of a TV show, the Our Hen House TV show, which co-produced with Brooklyn Independent Media, has run for 22 one-hour episodes. And by the way, these are your co-hosts of that TV show. They do a lot. Jasmin is the executive director of Our Hen House. Beyond Our Hen House, she has published work in magazines, on blogs, and in multiple anthologies, including the recently published Running, Eating, Thinking, published by Lantern earlier this year. She has performed as an actor-educator in the past, and is a pretty talented tap dancer. She may want to perform for us later. Mariann is the board president and program director of Our Hen House. She is a lawyer and an adjunct professor of animal law at Cardozo Law School and at Columbia Law School. She has also published work in multiple law journals and anthologies. So, for tonight, Jasmin and Mariann will talk for about 45 minutes, then a discussion involving you and your comments and your questions will commence. All right, Jasmin and Mariann.
Thank you. It's really great to be here. I'm Jasmin, and this is Mariann. And thanks for coming out. We are very excited to be here in Philadelphia. And I actually went to college in Philadelphia at the University of the Arts. So it's nice to be back in Philly 20 years later. And let's start by kind of talking about how we started to blow the vegan horn. And then we'll get into the talk, because meat it's kind of astounding how hard it is to understand how so few people really can digest the fact that it's that animal. It's just meat, it's not an animal. I stopped eating it when I was a teenager. Actually, when I was here in Philly in '97, I was 18. And I never really thought about anything beyond the fact that I had stopped eating meat. I just thought that becoming vegetarian was a natural extension of being a theater student. Kind of like, I don't know, wearing all black or smoking clove cigarettes. I was very cool. It was the 90s. And I haven't changed that much, but I don't smoke clove cigarettes anymore, usually. Anyway, it wasn't until many years later, when I was 24, so over a decade ago, that I even gave any thought to the dairy and egg industries, which, as I quickly learned, are two of the cruelest subsectors of animal agribusiness. So a friend of mine showed me some footage of factory farming. And where would we be without those friends? And I remember thinking, like, how could I not have known? How could I not have realized this? So after thinking about it, I decided to try it. I was afraid of the word vegan because it seemed really permanent to me, and I wondered what else that meant about my life. Like, would I have to start smelling like patchouli? Or I had no idea what that meant, but it seemed like I was too young to make such a radical decision. But I decided to just try it on for size, and so I took the leap. And after a few days, I realized it really wasn't that much of a leap. So it was really a great time in my life, I think. What about you? You have a different story.
Well, kind of. I was much older when I started to figure out that meat was made out of animals. It seems kind of odd. Like we all know that meat is made out of animals. Like, I did know that. But so I was like in my 40s when I started thinking about this issue. It was probably because I had a dog for the first time. It was actually my dog. And I think, as it happens with a lot of people, if you live with a companion animal and you really get to know them, you really start to see them and you start to notice what's going on. You notice there's a lot going on there. So that kind of set me up. And then a casual acquaintance mentioned that he'd stopped eating animals because of the way stopped eating meat because of the way the animals were treated. And I don't know why that got to me right at that moment. I mean, as I said, I did know that meat was made out of animals, but it just struck me. And I started to look into it. And I think it was the fact that my dog had kind of opened my heart to the whole idea of animals. And I just, when I started to look into it, I found out about factory farming. I found out how animals really are treated with just the most unbelievable horror that could be imagined. And so I gradually went vegan and incorporated it, tried to incorporate it into some of my legal work, and it just grew from there. It's kind of a lesson to me that it's never too late. Most everybody in this room is pretty young, but it's never too late for people to go vegan. It's just such a monumentally important change in their life that you can do it any time. And once I found out, I of course tried to become an activist as well, because it's not going to do all that much good just for me to be vegan. I wanted the whole world to be vegan, which sounds ridiculous, but it's just not ridiculous. If the whole world were vegan, there would be so much less suffering in the world. People would have so much more to eat. People would be so much healthier. I mean, what's wrong with that? Like, when you start thinking about it, it all just seems so crazy. So one thing just led to another, and here I am.
One thing led to another. I love that. Having that vision of the future is the first crucial step, but the next step is really trying to make that vision of the future come closer. Here at our hen house, we're really in the business of trying to do that. We're, as Corey was saying, like a multimedia hub for people who care about animals, anyone from their dog to, maybe they're really passionate about not wearing fur, to people who are already vegan, to people who kind of like choose the vegetarian option sometimes at the cafeteria, because why not? Our hen house is a hub for anyone who cares at all to create change for animals. And maybe later or afterwards I'll be able to show you a little bit of our TV show and our podcast. But we are, as Corey mentioned, we have a TV show, a podcast, an ebook publishing arm called Hen Press, an online magazine, and we are trying to be indefatigably positive because there's so much to be hopeless about. There's so much to cry about.
That's very positive.
But I didn't get to the positive yet. But we really believe that there is an inroad for creating change, and you could really embrace it. And it not only adds meaning to your life, but it's just such a great way of kind of using our time and space for the betterment of something we're passionate about. So I'm really excited to see everyone here today. And I guess the question that we're going to be talking about today is to be or not to be, which is the question.
Yes, that is the question.
But we had a different talk prepared for today.
Well, yes, we did. We were going, as most vegans do in most of their spare time, we were going to talk exclusively about lettuce.
Right, lettuce.
Because lettuce is the primary topic that vegans care about, and I feel very, very strongly about the romaine issue, and
It's actually
really important.
Boston lettuce could kick
And
Rome's ass,
this
Mariann.
is, you know, this is the burning question. But
Boston or romaine, this is all we care about, really.
But then we found, we were in the ladies' room
Just now.
and we found somebody's diary.
Yeah, it's someone's diary. And so what do you do when you find someone's diary? You read it,
Why
obviously.
did you actually picked it up to throw it?
I was going to throw it at you because, you
Because of the
know,
romaine thing.
right, well, Boston lettuce. So I picked it up, I looked at it and I said, wait, this is a diary. And I started reading it and I thought, oh, this person's actually struggling with whether or not she should go vegan, so let's change.
Unbelievable,
So
right?
coincidental.
We just happened to find this
Yeah,
diary.
it's so coincidental. Do you think they're confused yet? And so we said, well, all right, let's change the scope of our talk and read this poor person's diary. And then discuss to be or not to be, because as I mentioned, that is the question. So let's do it. Let's talk about this person's most personal issues. Because when I was thumbing through this, I had a lot of these same questions myself too at one point. Bet people here do too. So let's start, shall we? First entry. I'll skip the salacious stuff because you guys don't want to hear that, right? Yeah. There's this one part, let me tell you, it's really racy. Dear Diary, I just saw on Facebook that my best friend from high school went vegan. And Sarah has been flirting with it too. She brought a vegan cheesesteak back home to our dorm room the other day. Doesn't that seem like a contradiction in terms somehow? Vegan cheesesteak? But still, didn't J-Lo recently go vegan too? Does this mean I should consider going vegan? Interesting. That's J-Lo.
Dear Diary, I thought about it and I'm pretty sure I shouldn't go vegan. Meat is a necessary evil. It's not just that it tastes so good. Almost everyone eats it, so you must need it in your diet. And it's such an important part of my heritage. My Nana would be heartbroken if I didn't eat her corned beef and cabbage on St. Patrick's Day. And Bubby would just die if I didn't eat her brisket for Passover.
Passover and St. Patrick's
I
Day.
know.
In Irish Jew.
Surprising that she's an Irish Jew. Fortunately, we then don't offend anybody.
There's someone worth it.
And what's the 4th of July without a barbecue? Plus, a cheesesteak just isn't a cheesesteak without cheese or steak. Good point. And culture. Culture is one of the really important things that people struggle with when they're thinking about going vegan. They think, in my culture, there are these really important foods, and they're really important in my family, and a lot of them contain animal products. And people would just be really upset with me if I didn't eat them. And you know what? That's totally true. It's going to happen. Because no matter what culture you're from, foods are probably very important to your family, and a lot of them are going to contain animal products. It's kind of a worldwide phenomenon. It's not exclusive to any culture, and families really care about coming together over food. It's pretty important for most people. So this isn't an issue that maybe your culture is not the same as somebody else's, but the issues are kind of the same, and you do risk hurting people sometimes, but you know, this is getting a lot easier, I think, because there aren't that many families nowadays who gather around the Thanksgiving table without one annoying vegan there. You know, there's just a lot more of us. People are more used to the fact that people are doing this. And there's so many ways to make this happen. A lot of cultures have a lot of negative things in them. And over the years, those people who adhere to those cultures and love those cultures have kind of let go of the negative and embrace the positive. I mean, think of it. Slavery was a big part of a lot of people's culture. It doesn't mean that we should hang on to it. So, animal exploitation, there's a lot of ways to hang on to those foods, to know that those foods are important, to know that it's important for families to come together over foods, but to change the foods in ways that, you know, make people happier, healthier, but are reminiscent of all of those foods that we value so much.
Yeah, maybe some of you have heard, or maybe you've even said yourself, I could never go vegan because my mom makes this amazing pot roast on Christmas. And you know, I've definitely heard people say that to me, and so I think, well, I've actually had some really good vegan pot roast, but I'm not going to go there yet. There are 364 other days of the year that we could talk about, and chances are, by the time Christmas rolls around, you wouldn't really want it. But, you know, it's not necessarily like, I could never go vegan because I need cream in my coffee. It's kind of like, well, there's lots of other things you're doing too that we could start with, right?
I mean, do the best that you can, and you will find that you can probably do a lot more than you think you can. But just do the best that you can. If you think you can't do something, then you don't have to do that. You don't have to say, I can't do anything because I can't do that one thing.
But what do you mean?
I think it becomes an excuse.
But the best you can winds up being like a lot better than you often think it will be. You know what I mean? Like it winds up being usually embracing veganism. Yeah. So anyway, I'm glad that she's thinking. Let's see what else. Dear Diary, but if meat is necessary, how come all these people are vegan? But even if meat's not necessary, isn't it an important part of being optimally healthy? I mean, I'm on the swim team. Would I not swim as fast if I was functioning on fake cheese and fake steak? Maybe I should go paleo instead. Yeah, just cut out junk food and dairy and eat lots of grass-fed meat. Let's move on.
Paleo.
Yeah.
Yeah, paleo is a really big issue for everybody these days.
But
And she goes on, Dear Diary, okay, I've really been working on cutting out the junk food and the dairy, and I definitely feel better. Well,
that's the
the
thing.
paleo diet does help you cut out a lot of really bad foods. I mean, foods that are not great for your health, junk foods, that we should totally cut out junk food perhaps. But getting rid of a lot of junk food is
I
a
love
great thing
junk
to do. Getting rid of dairy, it's a great thing to do. But, you know, what are some of the long-term effects of eating all of that meat? The effects, diets like the paleo diet, which claims to harken back to caveman times, they've been around for a long time. When I was young, it was called the Atkins diet.
Didn't
Also
Atkins
extremely-
drop dead of a heart attack?
Yes, he did, eventually. And that's the thing, eventually. Meat and eggs, and though dairy is no longer included in the diet, they are the kind of things that have long-term health effects, not as much as junk food, which can have much more short-term harmful effects. So, you know, really do your research here. Is that really the optimal diet long-term? I would say no. And really do your research if you are concerned with that swim team stuff about what's going on in the world of athletes. I mean, veganism is exploding in athleticism, particularly in long-distance running, but football players, baseball players, tennis players, you're all seeing them talking about improving their performance with a high-quality vegan diet. Of course, you always have to cut out the junk food if you're going to eat well, but don't think that that's all you have to do, especially if you're concerned long-term. You know, it was what they claim it was the caveman diet. The fact is the cavemen and women didn't tend to live past their 30s, so maybe we want to do a little better than them.
Yeah, I would hope so. Well, but she's thinking about it. You got to give her credit for this. She's asking the questions. Dear Diary, I'm sick of paleo.
There you go.
Smart.
You know, cutting bread out of your life is a little tragic.
Well, that's what she says. Just because cavemen didn't eat bread doesn't mean I shouldn't. And I ended up eating so much meat. I can't believe that's a good idea. But even if meat's not necessary for me, I'm pretty sure it's necessary for people in Africa. I read somewhere that there are people in Africa who depend on keeping herds of animals to survive. I wouldn't want to do anything to harm them. World hunger issues is an important issue to broach
Like I
right
said,
now.
hugely important issues. There's really, you know, a couple of issues going on here, competing, and I want to deal with them separately. One is that what's good for people living an indigenous life in Africa is not necessarily what's good for you. I mean, you live where you live, and you should live the diet that's appropriate for you. So you don't have to figure out what they should be doing. In fact, it's really not your job to figure out what they should be doing, whether they're doing the right thing. You have to figure out what you're doing the right thing, and you're not living an indigenous life where you're herding animals. You're eating factory farm meat. So she's got to clue on to exactly what that means. That
I bet she will.
she doesn't have to figure out what's right for the whole world. But the other issue is a bigger one, and that is the world hunger issue. And this is an issue I think that people are just starting to catch on to, that if we really care about the world, and if we really care about people who are hungry, the fact is that most people in the world are not living indigenous lifestyles herding animals. They're living in urban lifestyles, whether they're in Africa or Asia or anywhere else, or in the United States, and they're eating factory farm meat. Factory farm meat is everywhere, and that's what people are eating. And the reason we're running out of food is because we're raising crops and we're feeding them to animals, and then we're eating those animals, and that is an incredibly inefficient way to produce food.
So it becomes an issue of privilege, you're saying?
It
also.
totally
Because
becomes an
unless we
issue
want a
of
world where the rich eat animals and the poor eat nothing, we've got to come up with a way of dealing with this.
There's just not enough land to raise crops and feed them to animals and then feed the animals to people. It's just, it's not going to work. Not with the population we've got now. And we're well over 7 million. We're headed towards 9 million. If we're going to feed those people, they have to. Oh yeah. There's New York City alone.
There's at least 7,000 people on this planet. At least 7,000. 9 billion people we're heading toward. My God.
Yeah. It's just not, I mean, it's just not going to happen.
Well, but it's good. I mean, you know, like these are good questions.
I really appreciate that she's concerned
Very thoughtful
about
woman.
world issues.
Yeah.
She just needs to be a little better informed about the real implications of her own diet. We don't have to worry about what people in the rest of the world are doing. Well, we do, but, you know, change starts at home.
Well, let's see where she comes out.
Dear Diary, but I'm not in Africa. There you go. She's a smart girl. I'm in Philadelphia. I can get other food, but should I? Maybe I should look into this. I'm going to check this all out. Well, I think when she checks it out, she's going to find out a lot of it.
Oh, let's talk about it. This is the fun part where we get to talk about what's happening to animals.
This is what happened to me when that person made that casual comment. I'm just disturbed about what happens to the animals, and I looked into it because I had no idea. I'd never thought about it. I never thought where all that meat came from. I just never thought about it. It was a blank spot in my brain. And once you find out, of course, the information is a lot more available now than it was then, largely because of undercover investigations, not because the press is revealing it, not because the government is revealing it, but because tiny little animal rights organizations have undercover investigators who are putting themselves at risk, and so it's getting some press. And you know, it's bad out there. I mean, what happens to these animals is just horrifying. Like, no matter what species you're talking about, the entire goal of raising meat is to do it with the fewest number of employees on the smallest amount of land, because that's what costs money. I mean, you have to feed them, whether they're living in good conditions or bad conditions. So that's not a flexible cost. But real estate costs and employment costs, most of all, those are pretty flexible. And so the idea is you just cram the largest number of animals into the smallest amount of space in the cheapest land in the country, and keep them alive for the shortest period you can, make them as big as you can in the shortest amount of time, and you make money. And that's what the industry is right now. Pigs don't live outside, they live in warehouses. The pigs who are slaughtered for food die at around 4 to 6 months. They grow so fast, which is due to the way they're bred. They're bred to grow really, really fast. So they're big by then. They're not full size, but because when they become full size, they're so enormous. They're big enough to slaughter. So 4 to 6 months, they're babies. Their mothers, of course, live in much, much worse conditions. They do stay alive for a couple of years, and staying alive is no benefit to these animals because their lives are harder. And they're kept in these little crates. Some producers claim to be moving away from them, but they never actually do move away from them. They just set these like far-off schedules to even this tiny little reform to get these mother pigs out of these crates that are so small they can't take one step forward, one step back, or turn around at all for their entire lives. And that's how they live for a few years, keep giving birth to these pigs, and then have their piglets, they weaned at a far too young age, and that's their life. That's the life of these animals. Pigs are amazing animals.
I think of that sanctuary that we visited in Washington State. Pigs Peace Sanctuary. And actually we had someone on this most recent podcast episode, 246, from the pig preserve in Tennessee, also talking about pigs. But this one sanctuary we visited in Washington State, Pigs Peace, I just remember we were lucky enough to be there for feeding time, and these pigs tend to be wherever they want and roam freely.
You know, pigs do get a bad reputation on a lot of things, and people tell a lot of lies about them, but the stuff about how they really like to eat,
It's
all
true. Totally true.
Pigs love
We would like throw apples and carrots, and they were like just like running.
They didn't fight at all, though.
No, they were like, yeah, Bob, you can have that one. I'll take this one. It was pretty awesome.
And some were really small because they had like pot bellies, and then they had food pigs, as they're called, like the huge, huge ones, and they all just got along. And the philosophy of both of these sanctuaries is the same. They just have huge expanses of land. They have small barns here and there, and the pigs just do what they want all day, and they sleep where they want, and they form little groups, and They're really cool animals. They're really nice.
Yeah, well, let's move on past pigs, because we could
Well,
literally...
there's chickens. I mean,
Chickens.
whether they're raised for meat or eggs, it's all bad. Maybe a lot of you know that. Chickens raised for meat also grow so fast. I mean, it's horrifying. They grow so fast because they're genetically engineered, bred to have these huge breasts, because breasts are what we like to eat. And so they're very top heavy. They're slaughtered at 6 to 7 weeks. I mean, they're chicks, only they're huge. And they just have horrible, horrible lives for their short little lives, and in these incredibly crowded warehouses. And they might be the worst treated because their very bodies are a burden to them. And then the chickens kept for eggs, they live in the cages. I mean, you've probably seen the pictures of the battery cages. Just brutal, brutal treatment. The chicks, male baby chicks are ground up right after they're hatched because there's no use for them, because they don't grow big enough to sell for meat, to raise for meat. It's unbelievable out there.
When a lot of people say...
It's just such a horror show, and you start talking about it as if, well, this happens, and that happens, and that happens. But when you take a step back and look at it, it's mind-boggling.
No, I know. I said I was a vegetarian. I went vegetarian when I was living here in Philadelphia. I was vegetarian for years. And I used to, by the way, introduce myself as I'm a vegetarian, but not the mean kind. Little did I know. And anyway, so all I ate was cheese omelets and pizza, like cheese pizza.
It's a healthy diet.
Yeah, that's it for years until I went vegan. That's it. That's all I ate. And as I mentioned earlier, I was vegetarian because I thought meat was icky. That was my beginning and end of how much I thought about it. But like, I just want to reiterate something that Mariann just said, which is that the males are killed at birth. The males born in the egg industry are killed at birth, even in the most quote-unquote benign of circumstances. And these are huge quotes over the word benign, by the way. This is an inherent issue within egg production, period.
So the way the industry is trying to address it, they're trying to come up with a way so that chickens will only lay female eggs. Like, how sick are we? That this is the answer to this? That we would engineer these animals to turn into like this warped species that doesn't lay male eggs?
Oh, I just thought of another sanctuary story, which is that we were visiting Vine Sanctuary in Vermont, and they have a lot of birds there. They have these little barns where they can sleep at night. And this is Vermont, and this is the winter. We saw these birds choose to sleep in the trees. And whenever I think about that, I get like all verklempt, because I think like this is what we take from them. They like to roost. They like freedom. And when you talk of animal rights, a lot of people say
every once in a while they go to the top of the tree. They really, really tall pine trees next to the barn. And they go to the top, and then they spread their wings, and then they jump. And it's completely terrifying. It's like, whee!
They're fucking with us.
They kind of think they can fly.
Yeah, they do. But I did want to say that a lot of people say when you're talking about animal rights, in so many ways you're talking about bird rights, because birds make up over 98% of the land animals killed for food. I have this number tattooed, 267. It's roughly the amount of chickens killed every second in the United States, 24/7, 267.
And if you're thinking worldwide, well, the number of animals killed every second for food, land animals, not including sea animals, is 1,776 every second. It's a lot of animals.
But let's talk about these other animals briefly, just like, and then we'll move on, because there's so much more diary to get to. And I don't think it's all as impressive. We're going to cheer you up after
beef. Beef cattle probably have it a little better in a way, but they are killed at around 2 years. They spend the last year of their life on a feedlot, which is a horrible, crowded, manure-filled. But it's outdoors at least, and there's a little bit. They can move around a little bit. Dairy cows, not so lucky. The thing that people don't realize about dairy, which I swear I didn't realize this until I started looking into this, is that like all other mammals, they have to have babies in order to produce milk. It doesn't just happen. You know how they always used to tell you, oh, the cows will die if we don't milk them. Well, they wouldn't need to be milked if they hadn't had a baby who's not around to drink the milk. I mean, it's just so obvious when you think about it. So they get their babies taken away. They're kept in confined conditions and have their babies taken away from them right after birth over and over and over again so that we can have the milk. It's just, no matter where you look.
And then
it's a
ultimately
nightmare.
killed for meat. But anyway, this is depressing. All right, let's move on. Dear Diary, okay, I've been looking into factory farming and this is unbelievable. That's what I've been saying. It's also horrible. How could I not have known? That's what I said.
That's
How could I
amazing.
not have known? Why are there no classes about this here at school? And it's also huge. 59 billion land animals every year worldwide are killed. This isn't just about me anymore. What about all these animals? I love my dog, she says. I miss my dog. But Mom says she's taking great care of him. I feel so overwhelmed and depressed. You know, now that I think about it, why even bother? It won't make a difference if one person goes vegan. Uh-oh.
Well,
It's the slippery slope of it wouldn't make a difference if I did it.
it's a perfectly good point.
No, I mean, on some levels, she's right. Probably won't make a huge difference, but that's probably not the best way of looking at it. The power of one person to affect social change can be a lot bigger than we realize.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when each of us changes, especially when we change our diet, people notice. I mean, they notice because they give you a hard time about it. But a lot of people don't even talk to you about it, but they notice. I mean, the person you order food from, the person who sits next to you in the restaurant, the manufacturers of the products that you're buying, the people in the supermarket, you ask them where the tempeh is, and they think, well, what's tempeh?
Yeah, it makes me think like
People are social.
if we thought this way about everything, we would never recycle. We would certainly feel free to litter, because what difference would it make if there's one candy wrapper on the ground? You know, it's like humans are an intensely social species, and social change still happens person to person and by example. But let's go on.
Dear Diary, well, maybe I could make a difference.
Yeah.
But even if I worked at this 24/7, which I don't want to do, the best I could do is to influence a few people. The world isn't going vegan in my lifetime. Well, I'm not so sure of that because crises are looming. Sorry, guys. But you're the generation that's going to inherit what's been done here. And, it's pretty bad. Especially, let's face it, the climate is pretty scary. Crises are looming. Things are going to change. There's going to be major changes in the way the world operates. And to be ready to meet those changes with with some solutions to one of the greatest problems that the world is facing, the misuse of resources for animal agriculture, it would put people in a position to make those changes when these crises occur. So maybe the world will go vegan. I don't know. It certainly would be a good idea. So sometimes the world embraces good ideas. Humans aren't very good at good ideas, but occasionally it happens.
Well, there's also the whole fact that every single individual life matters. So if the whole idea of like, well, what difference is it going to make? If you are actually not participating in animal exploitation, then not to be obvious, but you're not participating in animal exploitation. So every single life, like, it's hard to think about these animals as individuals when we're dealing with such big numbers of animals who are killed. But when you look at a sanctuary, for example, and you see this animal, you think, this is an animal who has a point of view. If you have a dog or a cat or another animal, then you know they have a point of view. Like, you see all their little thoughts, It's actually odd that I just said all their little thoughts. I wasn't even going to bring this up, but when Mariann had a cat who died, and when she was mourning the death of this cat, she kept saying, all his little thoughts, all his little thoughts. And I think of that often. It haunts me. Because I think of it in terms of the individuals at sanctuaries who have all of these little thoughts. So saying, I can't possibly make a difference, you could make a difference to one animal, and it's a whole entire life.
If you're communicating to other people and they go vegan, maybe it's not changing the world, but it's changing somebody's world. And each of these animals is important, and if we can avoid causing just one of them this horrible life of suffering, I think it's worth it. It's not like a lot of other social justice issues where you really do approach it in the abstract. It's hard to make a change for an individual. You're dealing with systems, and you're dealing with policy work, and you're dealing with governmental policies, and that can be important here as well. But each of us is actually, when we're eating meat, is actually participating in the harm to these animals. it's not somebody else somewhere in another part of the world causing this pain. It's us. So that gives us each the opportunity to do something about it too, and to actually improve conditions for at least somebody.
Well, there's a lot of power in that. I mean, we live in a world where we don't actually have a whole lot of power about a whole lot of things. And I love that there's power in how I spend my money and how I consume and whom I consume. One of my favorite stories, Mariann said that she went vegan because just a casual remark from a casual stranger someone said he was uncomfortable with the way animals were treated. Little did he know he was about to inspire the Mariann Sullivan to go out and become an animal law guru. Do you know who else that happened with? Peter Singer, who wrote Animal Liberation. I mean, if you've taken philosophy 101, you know who I'm talking about. And somebody said to him, he was having lunch with a friend, and he's been on our podcast, and we are sure this is a true story because we asked him about it. Somebody sitting across from him didn't have meat on his plate, and Peter said, "Why don't you?" And he said, I'm uncomfortable with the way they're treated. And then Peter Singer happened, the grandfather of the animal rights movement. And by the way, I have no relation to me, though I like to call him Dad. He doesn't appreciate it. Let's move on. Dear Diary, if we're going to make a dent, we need systemic solutions. That's true. We need systemic solutions. We need massive changes in policy. We need governmental regulation. We need huge shifts. But what is going to motivate government or industry to change? The fact is there's absolutely no signs that government is doing anything about this industry. In fact, maybe all signs are pointing the opposite direction. The only thing that will motivate government or industry to change is if they start to lose market share. And the best way to motivate them to do that is to organize a boycott. And you know how you spell boycott? B-E-G-A-N. Boycott. It's true. I mean, it's really actually, it's kind of amazing because we just came in from, I almost said the city, but you guys would have gotten mad at me, so I won't say the city, sorry.
We've heard that people outside of New York don't appreciate it when you refer to New York as the city. We've heard that.
I said it once when I was in LA, and they were like, they threw me out of Los Angeles after I said, it was just a mistake, it just came out. Anyway, we came from New York City, and we were at Penn Station, and we stopped at Dunkin' Donuts. Why? Because they just started carrying almond milk. And so we got an almond milk latte at Dunkin' Donuts. I haven't been to Dunkin' Donuts in 20 years. It was so exciting. And I grew up in New Jersey. And I used to go to Friendly's when I was growing up. Have you guys been to Friendly's? And I was like, I loved it. I loved it so much. And I haven't been back in, 20 years. And I want to go back because now, as of last week, they were carrying a vegan burger. This happened because people asked for it. This is why it happened. And now we're here in Philadelphia, where, by the way, our hen house was born in Philadelphia 5 years ago at the Last Drop Cafe on 13th and Pine, because we were visiting Philly and we concocted the idea for our hen house. It was actually born in Philadelphia. I can't believe the amount of vegan options that suddenly there are.
They didn't have anything to eat there we were there 5 years ago.
You mean the Last Drop specifically?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we stopped on the way here to,
They had a whole line of vegan pastries.
which is largely thanks to the work of the Humane League, I think, and of other activists in Philadelphia who have made that happen. But outside of that, just the amount of restaurants, it's blowing my mind. And I'm bringing this up here within this person saying we need systemic solutions because it's not unrelated. A equals B. We have to be voicing our needs and we have to be driving demand. You know what I mean? So that's what I personally think will fix the system.
They will follow the money.
Oh, they will. I'm going to keep going. Dear Diary, there are other ways to vote with your fork that are going to be a lot more appealing to people than veganism. It's probably better, she says, if I try humane meat. By supporting small farms and best practices, I'll be doing my part to improve our food system. I understand why she's thinking that. A lot of really well-intentioned folks.
I think that's where people tend to go with their heads.
Mm-hmm.
It's more expensive, but I don't even really have to change what I eat, and the animals will be fine. The problem is that while it's well-intentioned, it's frequently not particularly well-informed. What people think is good treatment of animals, even if they're okay with them being slaughtered, or don't think about that part too much. And what's actually happening in humane certification programs is usually pretty different. I mean, even some of the higher end humane certification programs don't require that the animals ever go outside. They permit some of the mutilations that are performed in factory farming. It may be a little better, but you know, it's really not the way most people think when they just see that label humane and think, oh yeah, that's okay. And a lot of these humane certifications are just like total scams from industry. I mean, Purdue labels its chicken humane. They have one line of chicken they label humane. They raise it in exactly the same way that they raise all their other chicken. They just slap that word on there. There aren't a lot of laws and regulations here. And so when people go in this direction, they're really not thinking about how the animals are really treated. They're really not thinking about whether they're doing this all the time. I mean, going to a fancy farm-to-fork restaurant once a month and just eating the way you've always eaten the rest of the month is not going to accomplish anything. It may make you feel better, it may make you think you're doing something, but you're not doing anything. If you're going to do this, you would have to do it 100%. And who's doing? You know, very, very few people are even thinking in that direction. And then just the whole systemic meaning of this. And we were talking about, like before, about a world where the rich eat animals and the poor eat nothing. Well, that's what we're talking about here. If we're going to use a lot of land to raise animals, and if you're going to treat them humanely, you have to use a lot of land. Well, it's going to be a lot more expensive to produce meat. And so what are they thinking? That rich people will have meat and poor people won't? Is there a way to make that happen? And is that really what you want to have happen, that we have two classes of society? We just don't have enough land in this world, in a planet that has 7 billion people pushing on,
7,000.
as I've learned tonight,
700 people.
Pushing 9 billion. I mean, they expect it to go to 9 billion by 2050. You know, we just don't have enough land to raise animals like that, unless it's just going to be for very few people. People are like thinking in their heads, well, maybe not in their heads, they're thinking with their mouths about going to the past. Well, we can't go to the past. It's not one of the options available. We have to think about how the world is going to look in the future. And it's just a paradigm that doesn't work. So,
well, and a lot of the inherent issues that we talked about before within, you know, when we were talking about factory farming, that well, all of the inherent issues are exactly the same in these so-called humane operations as well. You have to take away the baby cows in order for the mama cows to produce milk. You have to, there is no economic use for the male chicks and the egg industry. It's all part of the same system.
yeah, with dairy and eggs, they are inherently problematic because there's just no way you can raise animals to exploit their reproductive systems and take their babies away from them or take their milk away from them without causing them cruelty. There's just no way to do it. Even if you're doing it in the most benign circumstances, dairy cows still have to lose their babies, and egg-laying hens, you can't have the males, and hens don't actually lay eggs for their whole lives. So at some point they stop. If you're gonna like actually do this without killing them, well, you're gonna end up with a really large growing flock of pet hens who aren't producing your eggs. It's not. It doesn't work. I mean, in the real world, it just doesn't work. It's a fantasy.
Did she go on here? Humane dairy and eggs is okay, she says. Huh. She says, humane dairy is also a crock. Okay, but I'm sure I can still find eggs to eat. My uncle, who lives in western Pennsylvania, keeps a few chickens in his backyard. Maybe he'd sell me some of the eggs, or even have pity on a poor college student and give me them, or maybe I could get eggs from people like him. Well, you kind of just addressed this, so we'll just address this very briefly. You know, the whole backyard bird phenomenon, it's the same issues. The chicks who are part of the backyard bird operations come from the exact same hatcheries as factory farms. Exact same hatcheries. So you're dealing with the same issues with that. And as Mariann just said, like eventually these chickens will stop producing, like us, like women, eventually go through menopause and stop, you know, producing our own version of eggs, right? And so, ew, like when you think about that, Jenny Brown from Woodstock calls it chicken period, calls eggs chicken period. This is gross, right? Sorry, but I love it. I did not tell you guys the fact that like there's a legal amount of pus and blood allowed in milk, so I'll move on past that. Anyway, so you're still dealing with the same issues, and oftentimes these chickens are killed. Well, they're almost always killed in backyard bird operations, because then you would, as Mariann said, you'd have a whole bunch of pet hens. Anyway, we can move on past chicken period.
Sorry, okay, humane eggs are a rock. All right.
She must have visited.
So maybe I should try out the vegan thing. But let's not get crazy. How about meatless Mondays? As long as I'm doing something, I'm ahead of most people. Well, she's absolutely right, because most people are not doing anything. So is that what you should do? Like just try to be a little better than most people? Well, you know, I'm certainly all for anybody doing anything positive, and I think it's great, and every change that everybody makes is great. But I really hope that she comes to think about thinking a little bigger, and thinking about the fact that each life that she's consuming is a life, and just doing a little is really not going to help the animals that are killed for you the rest of the week. We're so far past, the way factory farming exists, and the way it looks, and what's happening to these animals is so horrifying that we can't take it in. I mean, we really can't take it in. But the fact is that each of their lives makes a difference. I mean, each of their lives is important, and baby steps are not going to cut it anymore. Something drastic has to change, and we each have to start by doing something drastic ourselves. And I really hope she's on the right track.
Yeah, I get excited when schools adopt Meatless Mondays and when cities adopt Meatless Mondays, and I'm glad that that's out there. So is Mariann. We're both really excited to see that kind of thing in the media more often. But I hope that becomes Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then a little bit more, as Mariann was saying earlier, to do the best that we can do. Well, let's see where she goes. Dear Diary, I think I should do more research before I make any big decisions. I'm going to find out everything I need to know. Plus, there's a pizza party at the student union on Saturday night, and let's be real, I'm not going to say no to that. Anyway, it's free. Okay? Well, I mean, there's so many resources out there that I'm really glad that this person is wanting to do research.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of information that's out there now is overwhelming compared to what there used to be.
Well, I mean, she says I think I need to do more research before I make any big decisions. I like it when you say, well, err on the side of cruelty-free when you're thinking about those big decisions.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't really know what's going on, I think that you should try, and you think that it's possible what you're doing is harmful, I think it's a good idea to not do it, and then do the research. And if you find out it's okay, then that's okay. But why take the chance that you're doing harm in the interim? And I really hope that she comes to think that way.
Yeah, I mean, and also, I've heard people say that they couldn't do this because they don't know as much as this person or that person, or, you know, Mariann Sullivan or something like that. But the fact is, we don't have to be an expert at everything.
This stuff is not rocket science.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's so bizarrely simple. It's like, you're harming animals, you're harming the world, you're harming yourself. Maybe you should stop. And it's really not hard.
You will get questions that you don't necessarily know the answer to. It will happen.
Yeah, but those questions are largely irrelevant.
Yeah, they'll be like, well, it's going to start with, well, what if? I'm just saying, it's going to start with, well, what if? And, you know, you're going to get, like, there's, of course, the desert island question. What if you're on a desert island? But you guys are academics, so you'll be able to walk through those what if scenarios. I usually just cry and stamp my feet and leave and say, like, go vegan. But anyway, I digress.
Good actor.
Yeah, no, I don't really do it. Well, I do it in my head. But the point is that you don't have to know the answer to everything. You just sort of have to go home and do your research about it. By the way, don't believe us about anything we're saying. You don't have to believe us at all. Just look it up for yourself and see what the reality is and see if that matches your own personal value system. What else does she go on to say?
Dear Diary, this is so cool. There was a vegan pizza at the pizza party.
Hey.
It was from Blackbird Pizza.
Hey! How
Unbelievable.
Cool. Yeah.
Which, by the way, we have not yet been to, so looking forward to that. It was really good, but I think I just got lucky. I mean, how often is that going to happen? The fact is that OMG, being vegan is so complicated. Wine isn't always vegan. Beer isn't necessarily vegan. What about bone char and tires? This is too hard.
Tires.
I need to take baby steps. I'll have a salad for dinner. Oh wait, I'm going out. I'll do it tomorrow. A lot of people get caught up in these issues, which
if people want to get caught up in them, I'm all for it, because it's good to draw lines, and you should draw lines sharply if you can. But don't drive yourself crazy, honey. I mean, like, you know, the wine, the beer, yeah, there are ways that they can be not vegan. There are problems with everything. Like become vegan and then find out about the fringe issues, or don't. Just do it the way that works for you. She's making it too hard for herself.
Do you think so?
She's allowing the perfect to be the enemy of the good.
Well, okay, yeah, I think it's true. Like, I could never go vegan because there's animal fat in tires.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can't live a life that is completely free of exploiting animals. It's embedded in our society. But it's better to do the best you can than to do nothing.
Dear Diary, but maybe eating the way I am now is a decision too. So either way, I'm making a decision.
Oh, good for her.
I'm going to skip ahead. This is the racy part I was telling you about before. But what am I going to eat? There's nothing to eat. Does the cafeteria even have vegan food? I guess I should look into it. Dear Diary, but what about those people in Africa? I really have to think about them. I saw this bumper sticker today, and it's so true. I really need to think globally. The power of bumper stickers.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So what would someone think if they were looking at the big picture? We have, you'll be glad to hear, devised a sketch.
Oh, right, a sketch. Yeah, this is not going to be awkward at all. This is...
We don't have to do this.
No, let's do the sketch.
But it's hard not to do it now because I just don't want to.
Right, well, what would our planet look like if somebody came in from another planet? I can't believe people are coming in right now as we're about to do this sketch. So what would it look like? Maybe the best way to think globally is to think about what someone from another planet would think if they came to visit.
It's a useful exercise.
So let's see what they would look like. And I'm going to play the part of the the alien, right? Okay.
You're the alien.
I'm the alien. Okay. This is my alien voice.
I'm the typical human.
Okay.
It's a stretch, but.
Yeah. Humans seem to be running the show here, so why are you feeding enormous amounts of food to other creatures even though so many humans are starving?
Well, we're not feeding the food to the animals so that we're not eating the animals. We're not eating the animals because it's the most efficient way to raise food. We're eating them because we enjoy eating them.
Wow, that's kind of bizarre. Our measurements indicate that those animals are complex beings with thoughts and feelings, but okay, I guess you're doing that because you can't eat the plants themselves.
No, we can eat the plants. In fact, I mean, I've heard they're really good for you, but we prefer to eat animals. We've always eaten animals.
I see. So it's clear that you're having trouble feeding all of the people by growing plants and then feeding them to animals and then eating the animals. Do you increase the amount of food that you'll have for people? Is that it?
Well, no, we actually decrease the amount of food that's available for people, because people could eat the plants, and then you feed it to the animals, and they have to grow bones and stuff, and that kind of wastes some of the calories, so you could raise a whole lot more grain than you could raise animals on 1 acre of food, but we like to eat the animals, because did I mention that they taste good?
But why would you do this?
Well, we've always done it. Yeah, we've always done it.
So you
They
don't...
do taste good. Did I say that?
So you don't like to eat plants?
No, plants are good. Plants are good, yeah, and you know, sometimes they make them so they taste like the animal foods. But you know what? They're not. It's never exactly the same. It's close, but it's not exactly the same.
Okay, wow, that's interesting. You know, we've detected that your planet seems to be getting warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer, and that you have a lot of ice on your planet. It seems like this ice is going to turn into water so that your land mass is going to diminish and other changes will occur. Is this something that concerns you, human being, or do you have this under control?
Well, it does concern us, but we prefer not to think about it. Because, like, I mean, at least I'm going to be dead by the time anything bad happens, so it's not really my problem. So it's just hard to think about, so we prefer not to.
It appears that one of the major causes, in fact, the biggest of all of the major causes, is that all of these animals you are raising for food. Were you aware that this was a problem?
The UN has been saying that for years, it's true. But you know, what does the UN know? I mean, come on. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, I don't know. But I just can't worry about it.
but why would you continue to eat animals if it's helping to destroy your planet? Do you have another planet to go to?
No. Did I mention that they taste good?
Okay, interesting. I think we are actually going to leave now and continue our search for intelligent life in the universe. By the way, did I mention that I have a BFA in acting from the University of Biarritz? That was our sketch. Applause. Thank you.
It was so spontaneous.
Totally spontaneous. Really weird that this person had that written in her diary, too.
Really?
Yeah. I think that when she goes through these issues, she's going to actually agree with this alien. You know, when you really do think globally and look at the whole picture, the answer is pretty clear, I think. But let's go on. Dear Diary, in my History of Feminist Thought class today, we were talking about reproductive rights. This whole topic goes so much further than abortion rights and birth control rights. The ability to have babies has been one of the primary reasons that women have been subject to so much control by men. Sometimes they've even been considered the property of their husbands. I kept thinking about how this applies to animals. When you think about what happens to dairy cows and laying hens, it really makes you shudder. And the only reason for it is that they can have babies. There's something so wrong with that. Of course, the boys don't do so well either. They're just killed.
She's really starting.
I'm so proud of her.
Yeah, you know, I have to say this was something that really impacted me too early on in my thought process of this. When I was a vegetarian, I was an activist with the AIDS Awareness Theater Company, and I, was eating my cheese omelets and my pizza and my cottage cheese, which by the way is really gross. Like, why is cottage cheese a thing? Like texture alone. Anyway, and I started to piece it together that I was speaking up for other marginalized groups like the LGBT community, like women's rights, and I myself had been dealing with a lot of issues with sexual violence, and when I made the connection between the exploitation of the reproductive rights of female animals, I thought, well, hell. I'm not doing that anymore. So that was actually a really important part of my own process. Interesting that it's part of this person's as well. So you want to take it from there? What are we on time? We're okay. We're almost done here, I think.
Dear Diary, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go vegan.
Awesome.
There's just one thing I'm so worried about, and that's will I lose my friends and will my family hate me? Yeah.
No, it was not true. It's one of the best things you can do.
Her whole family went vegan.
My whole family went vegan
So
after I
annoying.
did. Like
In a
my
good
whole
kind of way.
family, except for my brother who lives in Kansas. His name is Jeremy, and in case he's watching this. Other than that, everyone went vegan. In fact, my grandmother, who passed away last year, she had gone vegan at 86. So that was years ago. But it's I think that you will be blown away when you realize the various communities you could plug yourself into, socially, dating-wise, and also just a bunch of passionate people who have the similar worldview to you. And it doesn't mean that you have to exchange all of your set of friends, because I bet one of your friends is also thinking about this and would also be interested in exploring this with you. There's so many resources, there's so many groups such as this group here at Temple, and there's so many other groups in Philadelphia. There's meetup groups as well. Online, there's billions of ways of plugging yourself in. Okay, Dear Diary, well, wow. I just called my mom and told her I'm thinking about going vegan, and she was remarkably more receptive than I thought she'd be. In fact, she was at the bookstore when I called, and while we were on the phone, she even picked up a few vegan cookbooks that were actually out on some big display. Shocker of shockers, she's going to do it with me. So is my roommate Sarah, who's been thinking about this long before I have. I feel really good about my new veganism. I feel ready to try it on for size. When I think about my dog Bernard, I think I wouldn't want anyone to do anything to hurt him, so why would I hurt another animal? Anyway, Diary, I've got to go. There's a workshop coming up shortly about lettuce, and I think I'll check it out. But first, I have to pee. TTYL. Well, It sounds like our diary friend has really worked out her thoughts about veganism.
Does anybody want to claim this diary?
I'm
by the way?
excited that she's
Sorry.
parsed it out for herself and she's going to give it a go. I think that's a really big change that she's done that. I appreciated that she was thinking of things honestly.
Yeah, I think you know, sometimes for people going vegan is hard, but staying vegan is so easy because it's so positive in every way. Most everybody I know who has gone vegan, their one regret is that they didn't do it sooner, and that they just came to. It's certainly my big regret, coming to this too late in life. But I'm so glad I did come to it. The food is great. You feel the lack of denial about what you're eating is great. The people are great. You feel good about the way you're relating to the world. It's just all good.
Is this anyone's diary? It's okay. Yeah. I'm glad you're here. We'll get into the lettuce issue afterwards. We have a good 4-hour presentation on
By the way,
that.
romaine is
Boston lettuce is what it is. So in order to transition to our into doing some Q&A with you guys, I think we're just going to show our 30-second intro to our TV show to like kind of shake up the energy in here a little bit. If it plays. I think that it will take a second. It's take a second before. But yeah, we have a TV show that I hope you watch, and we're on 247 of our podcast. So we have a lot of fun with that. And we have amazing guests. I'm sure we've had Evelyn Deschanel, Mariann Sullivan, we've had lots of different athletes.
Can you dance?
Our hen house is a walking house. Our hen house is their hen house. Our hen house. Ooh, it's a funky fresh house. Our hen house is your hen house.
That's our dog Rose.
Isn't she beautiful?
Hello and welcome to our hen house, a place to find our way to change the world for animals. Joining us today will be Maki Klosterhalfen, the CEO of the Albert Schweitzer Foundation in Berlin, who recently visited Brooklyn, and while he was here, he dropped by to tell us about everything that's going on in the world of animal rights in Germany and beyond.
Then we'll be joined by Sarah Gross, who is a Brooklyn chocolatier extraordinaire. Her absolutely scrumptious line of chocolate bars, Rescue Chocolate, is not only delicious, not only vegan, but also helps dogs in need. You're going to love getting to hear from Sarah, and we're going to love getting to taste some Rescue Chocolate. I love shows where we have chocolate.
I love chocolate. I love shows that include chocolate. I love pretty much any.
All right, so anyway, just giving you a taste of our hen house and what we have going on. I think you'll dig the podcast, so look it up on iTunes and Stitcher. And now, not scary, we're not leaving that up there. I'm going to open the floor for questions, but you have to ask it in diary style. I'm just kidding.
And Jasmin, did I also look at other parts of the website right now?
The
Because
what?
you guys post a series of articles.
What
Like,
did
you
you
have,
want to look at?
like another section of the website.
Oh, yeah, why don't you click on...
Like, so you have, I just want to show all of this original content that you guys put up on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think that if you click on features...
Well, I'm just kind of
Oh yeah, let's just scroll.
Yeah, so.
That's my sign
What?
from the climate march.
No, you're
You
right.
made that?
Oh my God!
That's so cool.
Thanks for putting it.
So anyway,
We have a lot of fun. We have several thousand.
That's
articles.
unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Did we not credit you in our stuff? Are we screwed?
wait, Jordan.
I was standing right by you.
Awesome.
Hi.
Hello.
Our website is exclusively made up of photographs of people in this room.
We do have fun. This is one of our contributing writers, Robin Lalonde, who's also a novelist, who writes about, she puts animal rights themes in her book, and the arts and activism is a really important connection for us. As I've mentioned, my background is in the arts, so we like to explore that connection. Mariann is a lawyer, an animal law person, so we also like to explore that, and as well as academia, which Corey was saying some of what he does, and I'm sure you're all aware of that too.
No.
There's so many inroads for people who care about animals, and I like to believe that our hen house has been a an important hub for people to explore the various ways. So, are there any questions about anything we talked about, or maybe questions you have about where you're at in your own journey, whether you're a longtime vegan or just someone who's considering it? Did we offend you? Do you want to yell at us? If so, direct it to Mariann. You're right. They have a lot to ask us. Like I said, well, people want to talk. It's always the hardest to ask the first question. Yeah, hi.
Hi, sorry I had to wait a little bit, but he doesn't work for me.
We didn't do anything while you left.
We all waited.
We all waited in silence.
So we probably talked a lot about it and included it in everything that you said, but he just started going vegetarian, and he's thinking about going vegan, and we just kind of watched this together about it and things, and I started feeling really strongly about it, and I was just wondering, how big of an impact it really makes, how you guys feel about going vegetarian at least at first.
That's a great question. I'm so glad you're here. Good job bringing him.
I think that's how most people transition. I like to think of it as a transition because dairy and eggs do cause a lot of harm to animals. But I mean, people have to find their own way. I think it has a big impact, especially if you think of it as a transition, and if you don't replace meat with dairy and eggs, and you really try to use it as a way to move towards a more vegetable diet. And I think a lot of people do that, and it's a big thing to change your diet. People have to find the best way, but I really think trying to use it as a way to get all the animal foods out without making that commitment at first is a very valid way to go. And I think certainly the way I went, I think the way most people go is to move from. Some people I know have cut out everything but beef, which seems completely counterintuitive to most people. But they if they feel strongly about animals, they say, well, beef cattle are the least ill-treated. There's just all different ways to think about it. So no way is necessarily the right way, but I think it's thinking of it as a transition. And if that's the way that enables you,
I would
go
also
for it.
make a list of the things that you feel you can't live without. I'm sure that at least 80% of the people in this room have said or would still say, I could never live without my cheese. And, start to explore what the vegan alternatives might be, because there's definitely some really great ones out there now.
And with cheese, they didn't used to exist.
No, just a few years ago.
The vegan cheese thing is a new phenomenon.
It's amazing.
And like the vegan, there were dark. Does anybody remember the dark days of vegan cheese?
Moment of silence for all of us.
It was really expensive, and it looked just like cheese, and it tasted like I don't know what.
But now it's so
But
good.
things have changed dramatically.
And has anyone in here seen Vegucated, the film Vegucated? Okay, so you guys, listen, you have to go home and watch that. That's your homework. That's your homework. I said that in the classroom. So a few people did, right? See it? Okay, a lot of people saw it. Do you remember the scene in Candle 79 in the restaurant where
She's freaking out.
the young woman is freaking out, and the two very smart friends, one of whom is very, very smart.
This
working
really
with her, right?
nice-looking person
Yes.
was like, you know
Yeah.
what? You need to join a vegan meetup.
Yes, so that was me. And one thing I said, this was shot 10 years ago. You won't even know it was me. That's why I said that. But I'm bringing up the fact that it was shot 10 years ago for a reason. I said something in the film that by the time the film came out, I was really uncomfortable with the fact that that was my scene. And I said, could you at least go vegetarian for now? And I was like, oh my God, I would never say that now. I was so different 10 years ago. I would say, could you at least try veganism 3 times a week now, for now? That's what I would probably say now. And I hemmed and hawed. I was so upset that like this was on this video, this was on this movie that's a really popular movie. And I finally came around and was like, you know what? As Mariann said, a lot of us were vegetarian first. And I can't explain it, because I think that dairy and eggs are 2 of the cruelest subsectors of animal agribusiness. But I understand the rationale, because it seems like for a lot of people, it seems like an easier way to go in. I'm not sure I agree with it intellectually, but I also recognize that a lot of people go that way. But that being said, I probably would, if that scene were shot again, say, why not try a certain amount of days of going vegan a week? Maybe on top of your vegetarianism. Maybe, all right, I'm vegetarian, I'm going to go vegan 3 days a week or 5 days a week, whatever is attainable for you for now. I hope that answers your question. Any other questions? Do you guys want to talk about lettuce?
Can I add to that?
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot of vegan pledge campaigns in this vicinity. By vicinity, I don't just mean Philadelphia, but in the broader area, I guess. And there's one based in Philadelphia that happens every January and February. The Peace Advocacy Network conducts it. Starts in mid-January, goes until mid-February. And it's like people pledge to go vegan for 30 days. And there are meetings, gatherings, people come together. They offer you resources and moral support, and you get a mentor. You can like text on your own time. Kara just did it in January, and guess what? She's vegan.
Hi.
Yay!
Rachel is one of the mentors, probably the best mentor in the program, to be honest.
This is being recorded.
Yeah, I know.
That's because I give my mentees baked goods. So.
She buys them like books, so I have to say that you're a good mentor. But anyway, there's this program that's out there. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I really like it. It's great because you get a chance to see if you can do it.
Yeah.
And you get to develop the habits over the 30 days. So like maybe the first week you're like, what is this? But then once you figure out what you're doing, the habits become second nature. Like you were saying, like staying vegan is really easy. Getting there might be one thing, but staying vegan is easy.
There's a lot of hype around the word.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I was afraid of at the beginning. I was also afraid of failing. I was afraid of disappointing people like your lovely vegan friend next to you. And I was afraid of what like that would maybe mean for my identity. I just didn't like disappointing people. But I love that idea of trying for a certain amount of time. There's other resources too. There's the 30dayveganchallenge.com, which is a great resource for people who want to just try it for a certain amount of time. This is so squeaky, but I can't not sit in it. I'm sorry. I wanted to talk about Rachel for a second. Rachel works for Woodstock Sanctuary, and we talked a lot about sanctuaries. So sanctuaries are a place where, farm animal sanctuaries are a place where farmed animals who would otherwise be killed for food wind up, the lucky ones, the very, very few lucky ones. And we mentioned a few animals who we met and a few sanctuaries where we were at. But Rachel, do you want to talk about Woodstock really quickly?
Yeah, we're up in Woodstock, New York. So for those of you that are familiar with upstate New York, it's like 2 hours north of New York City, the city, for you ladies. But it's only about 4 hours from Philly, so it's an easy drive through New Jersey. And we are on a small piece of property, but we have over 300 animals, a lot of chickens, because they are the most needy, and then also a handful of cows, goats, ducks, pigs, which are the full-grown pigs that are refugees from animal agriculture. So they're the pigs that those pigs are meant to be. So, upwards of 800 pounds versus the ones that are killed, at 400 pounds when they're 4 to 6 months old. But I highly recommend coming and meeting these animals because I heard someone say once that the way we experience animals now in our society, unless you happen to work in the industry or you're a hobby farmer or you have an insane amount of companion animals like I do, is through actually your plate. So you're meeting animals every day. They're just dead animals or they're the animal products from the industry. And so actually going and meeting some of the refugees, as we call them, from the industry is really impactful. And you get to realize that these are individuals and how meaningful it is to save one hen from the life of a battery cage because they're all unique and they're all individual. So Woodstock is great, and there's also a small sanctuary actually about an hour from here called Chinoa Manor, which is also a really lovely sanctuary that promotes veganism but also gives you a chance to meet the individuals that you're saving by choosing to make the choices that you make. It's the best way to make someone vegan, actually, is to take them to a sanctuary. Because it's hard to say you don't matter once you meet one of those animals or, I'm sorry, I like bacon. Once you meet a pig, you realize that those choices are so impactful.
To piggyback on that, one of the worst ways to try and make someone vegan is to just talk about statistics. So to just talk about, there are 9 billion animals. That said, there's an event for advocates this Thursday by someone who just talks about numbers, Harish Sethu, who runs the blog countinganimals.com. And he is giving an animated infographic presentation at the Rotunda, 6 to 7:30 this Thursday. And it is not an event that you bring your friends to and say, hey, go vegan after. Instead, it's an event that you will learn a lot, knowing that you know these individuals, but also that there is this greater system.
I think Harish is amazing. And I mean, I think even reading his numbers, which it means a lot to have accuracy and to have somebody really crunching those numbers and making it real. I mean, so for different things appeal to different people, and talking about it in a personal way works for some people, but really seeing those numbers and the unbelievable impact of them and the way he just eliminates some of the excuses by looking at what's really happening. I think his work is really amazing. I'm very excited for you that you're going to see him speak.
Apropos to that poster, I think it helps to see veganism as more than a diet. Because I think it's easier to drop out of being a vegan if it's simply a diet. But if you see it in relationship, for example, just as an example, a relationship with the earth and what the not being a vegan, being a flesh eater, the ramifications of it. So the deforestation, for example, for pasture land, for cattle, or the ocean dead zones, the emptying of the oceans because of fishing. And I think it also helps to look at our language. We often use the term human and animals, and it sets up this dichotomy as if humans are still somehow separate from the rest of the earth, So I think it helps to see it as a much broader choice, a voluntary choice to do something good for the environment. I mean, something that simple, And there's so many other ways that you can look at it beyond just what's on the plate.
I totally agree.
Yeah. I'm looking for advice. I have a friend who I never imagined would have went vegan. I lent him a copy of Meat is for Pussies, which I've never read, but I can kind of imagine the tone of it in the title. And he went vegan pretty much immediately after reading it, but since has reverted back to vegetarianism, and I don't really know what to do. I'm afraid that if I don't do anything, he'll revert back completely. So, it's not.
You can't control him. I mean,
Yeah.
you can try to be friendly, you can try to be supportive, but you can't force. I mean, it would be, I guess, useful to ask him some questions.
In the morning, like he can't get away from eating eggs in the morning, and he knows what happens to the male chicks, and if I just let him go and have like a feed.
I would, just be honest with him about your concerns, and also maybe go out for a really good tofu scramble with him on Sunday morning, and just kind of win him over with the power of food. Be a really great walking example of how easy and delicious it is to be vegan. Say that you can totally be there to support him. Be his mentor, his unofficial mentor, and you can't batter him over the head with it. Mariann's been vegan for over 20 years, but was a lapsed vegetarian
beforehand
A lot of people go back and forth.
at the beginning.
You can be be supportive, ask questions. It's sometimes better to ask questions than to tell people things, since he probably already knows most of the information.
And a lot of it is
But
about,
you can't control what other people do. You can only, if maybe he shouldn't be the focus of your attention. I mean, I think sometimes, I mean, from the way you're talking, I'm assuming he's not family, but sometimes people get very focused on turning their family vegan, and they put an enormous amount of energy into that, and it's very, very important to them because they love their family, but their family's just not going vegan, and a lot of times there's family dynamics that may mean that you're not the person who's necessarily they're going to listen to. There's all sorts of things going on. If you're thinking of yourself as an activist who wants to change the world, well, this guy isn't any more important than somebody else who might be right on the fence and just needs some information that it would be easy to supply them with. So you can do what you can do, but people make their own choices.
I just want to add one thing.
So far, until I am put in charge of the world, and then they're not making choices.
I just want to add one thing though. My suspicion, I'm completely projecting because I don't know your friends at all, and I only know those 3 sentences you said about him, but my suspicion is it has a lot to do with social life stuff.
I think it does.
I am right. And so, I think that is such a key for most, not all, but most people, when they're making the transition to veganism, is to really, and as we were saying before, not trade in your social group, but just add to it. When Mariann went vegan over 20 years ago, she had to do it alone, pretty much. When I went vegan over 10 years ago, I didn't do it alone. I went to meetup groups. I had my friend who proclaimed me a vegan before I did. I found that so unbelievably important. I do not think I would, I hope that I would have eventually found it, but I don't think without that I would have stayed at that moment.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we like to think our hen house can be is that vegan friend for people who really don't have any, because finding a social group is so important. In 1 week, we got a message, an email from somebody in Niue Island, which is a country in the Pacific, which I've never actually heard of, but it is actually a country. She's the only vegan she knows. And somebody in rural Saskatchewan is the only vegan she knows. I mean, it is tough.
This was the podcast specifically.
Yeah, the podcast,
they listened to the podcast.
But
and then I guess
it's
just
to
kind of combine what you were saying and what you're saying, one other little last technique that I'll throw out there is to think about what he's interested in. And is it health? Is it athleticism? Because if it is, then you can point him toward athletes who are vegan. If it's other social justice issues, there's lots of other resources for that. If it's the environment, well, that's obvious. If it's the arts, then there's lots of artists who are speaking up for animals. I guess what I'm saying is it's a psychological experiment in a lot of ways for us, to kind of meet someone and shake their hand or have a conversation with them and think, what's my way in with that person? It's not one might be like, you are manipulating that person. No, I don't think that's right. I think it's really a fascinating psychological experiment. There's something he's into that he doesn't realize is a way in for his veganism. And then move on to the next guy.
Some people are just, people are very different, I think, in their willingness to be a little different. Some people are very intolerant of being different in any way. Other people actually enjoy it. And I think that has a lot to do with whether somebody can maintain something like this that is important to them personally, but may not get a lot of acceptance in the world. But, he made an important step. He read the book, he saw that information, and he went with his ethics. So I think there's a lot of hope that he'll find his way back.
Thank you.
I
just want to add on to that, I feel that if I want to recharge on my ethics, I'll just grab a vegan documentary and watch it. And maybe it's something showing the Ritz next week. Let's go see this. Or whoever will watch this video on Netflix. Or let's go to this vegan potluck together.
Great idea.
I love that idea.
Sometimes seeing the film has more impact than reading something, even though it's the same facts.
Right. Exactly. It's quick and it's powerful.
Another awesome way to recharge batteries, which Ellie, you already do, is leafleting. The Humane League comes to Temple's campus once a month to leaflet And it's a great way for other folks to really recharge batteries and spread on the good that you can do, spread on the message, because there's a lot of folks out there who just don't know about this, and bringing this to them, we can get out thousands of booklets in a couple hours here because this campus is so huge. It's wonderful. And that's, how many people did you just impact?
Yeah, especially when you are having a frustrating time with somebody, you can feel like you can do that, and you will have reached somebody in doing that. You may not know who they are, or you may not see that, but you'll know you have reached somebody, and it makes you feel a lot better.
Yeah.
When
I love
your
that.
best friend
That's a
doesn't
great
listen to you.
idea. And you can do it for 15 minutes too. So, is there like a final question or comment or anything like that? Yeah.
Did you guys already talk about how it came together to form this whole site and how much energy and time and so?
We did not. I think we touched on it briefly at the beginning, but
Do you guys want to give us the entire
the
story?
whole story.
I was bored.
Mariann and I are married to each other, and I was the campaigns manager at Farm Sanctuary, and had come from, as I mentioned, a background of AIDS awareness activism, and when I was at Farm Sanctuary, I really started to get very excited by the idea that so many people, just like regular people all over the country and the world, were getting involved in their own communities. Like it wasn't just following the campaign of a top-down organization. And I thought, well, these are really the true heroes of the movement, as far as I'm concerned. Just people who are going into their communities and baking cupcakes every day and providing the recipes along with a wide vegan brochure. Teachers who are incorporating humane education curriculums into their classes, and artists who are not only painting pictures of animal exploitation, but then selling them and benefiting a different charity, things like that. And so Mariann at the same time started to be excited about for-profit activism, businesses that are incorporating pro-animal rights plans into their businesses, new restaurants, things like that. And so I thought that we should start a podcast. And I was still at Farm Sanctuary at the time. Mariann thought we should start a blog. And so we kind of were like, well, then let's start a blog or a podcast. Enter Philadelphia, January 2010. And we were at the last...
I feel like there should be theme music playing in the background.
Our hen house. And we thought about it, and we started the blog and the podcast. And then we were like, well, the blog shouldn't just be about for-profit activism, because what about the arts, and what about law and legal activism, and what about academia, and so that's kind of how the blog became an online magazine. Very soon after I left my job at Farm Sanctuary in order to make our hen house a nonprofit. And so we became a nonprofit a few months later, because as soon as the resource was out there, sorry about the pun, but people flocked to it. And people were like, yes, I want ideas for how to make a change in my community. People were sick of just signing a petition on change.org. People were sick of just sponsoring a farm animal on Thanksgiving, which, both of which have their place. But they wanted ideas and opportunities and a central clearinghouse for creating that. So the podcast was like an unbelievable undertaking for us. At the beginning of starting it, I think I edited, each episode took me 40 hours, I think, and I did it weekly. We've never missed a week.
We bought Podcast for Dummies.
We bought the book Podcasting for Dummies, and I read it front to back, seriously. And and now I think it takes me 10 hours a week to edit one episode, which again, we still go up every week. So then, so we had the podcast and we had the online magazine. We were a nonprofit by then. I left my job at Farm Sanctuary, and eventually we expanded to become the online magazine. We got other writers, so it wasn't just me and Mariann writing it. And the website overhaul helped with that. We started an ebook publishing arm because do you want to actually say why we started the ebook publishing arm?
Well, there were just
opportunities to find pieces that people were writing, which they're usually short form, but much longer than a blog entry. And we had an opportunity to publish our first piece, this unbelievably beautiful piece that I absolutely love by Sanghamitra Iyer about chimpanzees and a very bizarre story about them. And so we did that, and we're finding more and more people want to publish works that really have meaning for people, but they're never going to get published
There's
anywhere
not a place for them.
And so it was just another way for people, you know, the thing that you find out when you get involved in this movement in any way is that once people get turned on to this, they are on fire. Like once this sinks in, like what's going on, and how easy it would be to fix in some way, and how enormous it is, and how awful it is. People just are on fire, and they really want to do things. I mean, so many people just want to do things. They don't want to just give to an organization. They want to find ways to talk to their friends, to help their friends see this, to get other people to see this, so that we can make this change. And we just try to be helpful to all of those people.
And then
to create a community, to bring, you know, so that one person's idea can be communicated to other people.
And we're shedding light on what other people are doing. So about a year ago, we were guests on a TV show for a network that was just being launched, Brooklyn Independent Media. We were talking about vegan Thanksgiving. And then we got offered a TV show. And that kind of blew our minds and was probably the best thing to happen to our hen house. So we started that in March. We're about to go into season 2 of it. And it's a really incredible opportunity to be able to talk about this stuff on TV. And now we have a small staff, very small. It's, you know, me and Mariann and 2 other people, one of whom is about 30 hours a week and one of whom is 10 hours a week. So we make up our hen house. And Mariann still teaches animal law, and we go around and do talks and stuff. And I have a book deal that is going to come out in February 2016. So I'm just finishing it up now. It's a memoir about food and activism. So it's another incredible opportunity that I feel really lucky to have. But I really think, as Mariann was saying, our role is just to like create a sounding board for other people to tell their stories. It's not us. We're just, you know, using the fact that we read Podcasting for Dummies to give people the microphone. We have a lot of fun. Thanks for that question. And thank you, Corey, and thank you everyone for coming, and thank you for dropping your diary in the bathroom. We'll be staying after to talk about lettuce. Feel free to stay. And thanks again.